Good morning. Today is October 3rd, 2023. It's a sidecar SIG Node working group meeting. Welcome, everybody. Let's start with the first agenda item. We want to close up on termination of sidecars. I think we get a lot of comments, and I feel we are pretty close to finalizing that termination ordering. Gunju prepared the presentation. Gunju, do you want to share or you want me to share?
I just made it to visualize the part termination, so you can just
Okay, let me share it. Yeah, you should see it now.
The ratio is very strange. It's like square.
Is it better now?
Yes.
Okay. Oops. Is it? Yeah, I suck at presentation. So anyway, Gunju, do you want to speak over a slide?
Yes, the first slide is just about the container termination of regular containers. The first C0 container terminates gracefully. It just executes the pre-stop and gets SIG term after that, and it terminates by itself. So C1 cannot terminate by itself. It cannot terminate gracefully. So we have to send CQ to that container, and C1 is terminated after it gets CQ. And C2 is the different thing. C2 execute the pre-stop hook, but the pre-stop hook doesn't finish in termination grace period. So we have to interrupt the pre-stop hook and send the SIG term. In this case, we have to extend the termination grace period for 2 seconds. This is the exceptional case. Yes, the next.
Is that standard? For some reason, I didn't know about the 2-second rule. So we always guarantee that you have 2 seconds?
Yes, in implementation, we are doing that way, but in documentation, we are saying that we must finish our pre-stop in termination grace period. So we recommend the users to finish their pre-stop hook within the termination grace period, but if they don't finish the pre-stop, then we don't just secure the container. We are sending SIG term and waiting for 2 seconds. It is not documented, but the current implementation is like this.
Okay. I wonder if we should. I don't. The fact that I didn't know about it makes me worried. That like emergently, it's part of the API now, right? Everything that is exposed is part of the API. But I wonder if we should either say it was never part of the API and it was a bug, or if we should just document it. That's an aside, but I didn't even know about it. Sorry. Please go ahead.
Yes.
And Andrew, did you check on ordering of pre-stops? Do we send them one by one from the beginning or in random order? I think it's sequential, right?
They are sequential, but they are asynchronous. So they are all, each container has its own go routine. So,
okay.
But is the pre-stop delivered in the go routine?
Yes.
Then it's not in order, right? Go routines are not guaranteed to execute in any order.
Yes. Yes.
So it is
it's not ordered, but it's instant. They all start almost at the same time.
Sure, but if I have one core for this, they could all serialize. If I have 8 cores, they could all run in parallel. If I have 4 cores, they could run in a random order, right?
Yes.
So all we can say about it is they are asynchronous.
Yes, they are not serialized.
They're not serialized, and they're not ordered. Like they don't start in a particular order. Even if we kick them off in a certain order, the Go routines might not schedule in that order, right?
Yes, yes. Yes, that is right. And I'm not sure about this figure. Let me know if I'm wrong. If there is one regular container and 2 sidecar container, if the pod is termination requested, then the first container, regular container, start termination and it terminates gracefully, and the S2 container, sidecar 2 container, start its termination, it start pre-stop and termination SIG term, and then when it's finished its termination, S1 sidecar 1 starts its termination. This is, I think we are saying about this proposal, right?
Yeah, it was
Is
a
this
proposal from previous conversations.
Yeah, the question, this is not how I interpreted what's currently written in that
No,
PR.
no. It's not. It's. I think Gunju is trying to say this is a previous proposal that we have now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. And the next one is the restart scenario.
Can we skip into current proposal? This is also for previous proposal, right?
Actually, I'm saying about the current proposal, isn't it right? Let me know if I'm wrong.
The way I read the current proposal is as soon as C0 ends, then we send SIG term to both S1 and S2 at the same time.
Ah,
I actually kind of prefer this, but the proposal as it's written says SIG term is delivered to all sidecars at the beginning of the sidecar termination section.
Yeah. So
is the intent here that this is actually in the order it was in the manifest? Like there's some actual implicit ordering between the sidecars, or explicit ordering rather.
Yeah, one of the big open questions is the shutdown serialized in reverse definition order, or is it all the apps and then all the sidecars, but no synchronization within each cohort?
So what we're saying in the proposal that we want to start all the pre-stops simultaneously, and then we will send SIG terms one by one after a previous sidecar has terminated, starting from the last one.
Oh, so SIG term is serialized.
Yes, and we want to wait till previous sidecar completed. So pre-stops
I misunderstood then.
Let me open that. So pre-stops, we want to run pre-stops as soon as possible, and it's mostly for scenarios when you only have like 30 seconds to clean up, and you want to start pre-stops as early as possible.
Right, and Sergey and I argued a lot in the comment thread here, but I think the point of pre-stop is pre-stop means you are going to go down soon. We don't know what soon means. We don't make any guarantees about why you're going down, but you are going to go down. It doesn't tell you anything about the pod termination or whether you just failed a probe or what. You are going down. That's all it means. Right? So if that's fine. So as soon as in the pod deleted case, as soon as we see that timestamp, we can send pre-stop to everybody asynchronously. Everybody gets notified. You are going down soon. Soon might be minutes or hours even, but you are going down soon.
Yeah, and in original, like, so when we wrote it first time, we said that we want to all sidecars to enter terminated state and never retry again. After conversation, we decided that maybe we can do better. Maybe we can differentiate between, what is my comment there? So maybe we can differentiate between exit status 0, exit code 0, and everything else. And if it's exit code 0, then we will treat it as a non-restartable.
So hold on a second. Before we get to that, can we talk to the SIG term serialization or non-serialization question?
So yeah, okay, it's item number 3. So we say that we call pre-stop asynchronously for everybody. Then once last primary container terminates, the last sidecar container is notified by sending SIG term. So we, like, if you defining your sidecars as an istio and then logging and then metrics, then metrics will terminate first by sending SIG term. And the next container will wait and it will receive its own SIG term after previous sidecar terminates. So it will wait till termination of previous sidecar.
Okay.
Because
let me ask the question here then. Do we wait that same 2 seconds between SIG term and SIG kill? Or is it different?
About 2 seconds. So I don't think you want to wait.
I think we'll have to go check why we added 2 seconds. There was some race condition, I guess.
But the 2 seconds are only sent at the end of the termination grace period. We don't always wait 2 seconds.
Sure. Sorry, maybe can you bring back the drawing? Whoever's driving, is that Sergey? Yep. Yeah, this drawing. No, wait. Yeah, this one. If C2 was actually a sidecar, so C1 consumed all of termination grace period, right? It did the lazy exit thing and it just waited for SIG kill, which we know a lot of containers are going to do. Then the sidecar, does the sidecar still get SIG term or do we just tear it down immediately?
My idea was that we'll tear it down immediately. So, and remember, this is only a situation when pre-stop hasn't finished yet. So pre-stop is still running, and then you add 2 seconds between SIG term and SIG.
What does it mean for pre-stop to still be running? Like, what if pre-stop was defined as HTTP? You sent me an HTTP. I received your HTTP. Thank you very much. I still didn't exit. Am I still running pre-stop or am I in some other indeterminate phase or state? I'm trying to find the right word because phase is technical.
There's not 200 yet, so we're still running. Once response is received, it's done.
Okay,
but
so I responded.
I understand.
Go ahead, Matthias.
Yes, sorry. I understand your point, Tim. Is like if C2 was a sidecar, even without the pre-stop hook, it won't get the SIG term before.
Right. So I took your pre-stop.
That's your point. Like then do we send the SIG term and wait 2 seconds or do we kill?
Right. Once you've reached the end of termination grace period, like by definition, you have no grace left, right? And so the fact that we offer 2 seconds in this particular case is, I mean, I get it. It's sort of a very tiny corner case and we're trying to be nice and make sure that pods clean themselves up. But if you extend this to sidecars and you end up in the same sort of condition, and hypothetically, I have 10 sidecars, does that mean I have 20 extra grace period seconds? Or does that mean I have 0 extra grace period seconds?
Because this will happen asynchronously. From how I imagine it's implemented, it will be happening in separate coroutine. So it will, like, once we reach the termination grace period, then we will send SIG term to everybody, wait for everybody 2 seconds, and then terminate, like send SIG kill.
Okay, so if C2 was let's say there was C2 and C3 and they were both sidecars, right? The drawing I want doesn't exist. There were C2 and C3, but they're both sidecars, so S1 and S2. So you're saying at the end of termination grace period, the app container C1 is killed, and the app container C2 and sidecars S1 and S2, not shown here, would all get SIG term at the same time.
Yes, because they
would get a fixed 2 seconds in total to shut down. No sequencing, no guarantees any further.
Yeah, and we only want to give ordering and like reverse order if you still have time to clean up. If you don't have time to clean up, like we don't give you anything. And 2 seconds realistically is nothing. Like you wouldn't be able to do reasonable offload of data in just 2 seconds.
That's true, but it gives you time to like close connections with a reasonable error message, for example.
Okay.
So I understand why the 2 seconds would be there. I was mostly surprised that it's not documented and I didn't know about it. And therefore it is not in my the state diagram that I keep trying to update and keep finding that I'm wrong on. So I'll have to think about how to integrate this one. I think I'm gonna have to make the font smaller on my drawing because all the boxes are filling up the page now.
So should we come back to the proposal?
So I mean, that seems reasonable to me. This, like, we have to define the corner case, right? So I think we should define what happens in a sidecar if my pre-stop finishes, but the app containers are still running. That's okay, right? I'm just in a holding pattern until SIG term comes, right?
Yeah.
And that's not abnormal. Like, it's not going to suddenly force terminate you if you finish your pre-stop. So if there's no grace period left, then any remaining containers get SIG term 2 second SIG kill, sidecar or not. Okay, that makes sense to me. And if there is grace period left, then we will sequence sequence the sidecars, waiting, where the sequencing means wait for pre-stop to finish if it hasn't finished already, and then send SIG term, and then wait. And if there's still grace period left, then we do the next one the same way. Is that right? We should write that down. Like, it's complicated. We should write like a pseudocode or something that explains it in sort of high level. But that makes sense. It feels filled with corner cases, but as long as we define them, I guess I'm okay with that.
And the last
Actually,
All right.
slide 6
Do we want
and
a
7.
diagram as well, or only pseudocode is enough?
I mean, I love diagrams, but diagrams in KEPs is always a little weird, especially diagrams that are this complicated. Like, you can't draw this in ASCII. You have to pop out to a drawing, which means you have to include the source material, a dia file or something, which is just weird. Right?
Is Mermaid working in the KEP? No.
I don't even know what Mermaid is.
Same.
Okay.
Is it a diagramming thing for Markdown?
Yes.
If you can make it
work,
please do, and go ahead with that.
Okay, I will try. I will definitely write the pseudocode and then try to put the diagram that you wanted that doesn't exist yet. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the pseudocode will be really helpful because from a high level, I think we understand it now. We just need to call out all of the ifs and elses and make sure that, you know, every possible path through the decision tree is documented. Okay, and then I had one last thought. No.
Restart.
Okay.
Restart.
Go ahead.
We need to discuss restart.
Yes. Okay. Let's talk about restart.
So originally we proposed that once we enter this termination state, we wouldn't restart anything any longer. And this is how it works for regular containers. If you crashed after you started your pre-stop, out of luck, yeah, you will be killed. I mean, you wouldn't be restarted any longer.
So
We don't
let
need
me ask
any.
a quick question, Sergey. I went and played yesterday because I wasn't sure about this pre-stop being called on restart on probe fails, and I proved it, and you're right, and I was wrong. But when you're in a pre-stop, you're not in the terminated state. You're in the running state.
Yeah, it's a limbo. That's why many customers complaining about stuck in some unknown running state.
Yeah, we don't have a terminate-ing. We only have terminate-ed.
Yeah, but in this limbo state, you wouldn't be restarted. Your container wouldn't be restarted. So, okay, it doesn't have a name, but you wouldn't be restarted.
Yes. And so I think what Mark and I both said was that isn't going to work, right? Like that just doesn't fly.
Originally, we thought that it's an edge case, and we just want to gloss over it and maybe solve in future. But I think we get enough feedback saying that we have to restart. So the proposal currently, I think I have a summary in the cap comments, that we will be restarting sidecars after they enter the pre-stop, but only when they exited with non-zero exit code.
So I wanted to challenge that. I wrote a comment this morning, but you probably haven't seen it yet. Why does it need to be different? Like if you are in pre-stop, you are actually in state running. You should be restarted.
So I mostly wanted to help writing very simple sidecar containers that doesn't that want to finish as soon as possible, and they just not need it any longer.
But my assertion is if you get a pre-stop but not a SIG term, you shouldn't exit. You're not done. Pre-stop is warning that shutdown is imminent, but it is not a shutdown.
Okay.
I mean, I'm trying it out for size, right? So argue with me, please. But that was how I would interpret pre-stop is you're going to get a stop signal soon, but you haven't yet received it.
But then if you restart, should you get another pre-stop?
Yeah,
Good question.
That's what I wrote originally, that every time you've been restarted, you get another pre-stop hook. So you just know that, I mean, you can differentiate this way between liveness kill and preparing for termination.
So what I don't know is like, do people out in the wild use pre-stop as a way to exit? I don't know why you would. It feels like doing things the hard way, but probably somebody does. And so if you took that here, you would get a pre-stop exit, restart, pre-stop exit, restart, pre-stop exit, crash loop back off, right?
Yeah. I think I'm not trying to help people who want to exit from pre-stop. I thinking of people who will leave code in such a scramble after pre-stop that they're not needed any longer. So if pre-stop is clearing up everything, so your process wouldn't function normally after that, then probably want to be just terminated and exit.
Your pre-stop is broken. Like pre-stop is supposed to be advisory that you've opted into.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Okay. So
now I'm going to argue with myself since nobody's going to make the argument. In a regular app container, once you hit pre-stop, we will not restart you, right?
That's true. Yeah.
Right. But we argued earlier that we use the same pre-stop signal for sidecars and for app containers. So either we need two different hooks or we need two different semantics is what I'm arguing.
Or we need to restart the main containers as well.
That would be a pretty big departure from where we are today. I don't think we can do that.
I mean, we have to be consistent at some point because otherwise documenting this and training this will be impossible.
I didn't get an argument why we need two hooks.
If we had a different hook, if the hook was pod stop, like it's explicitly the pod is being stopped, not just your container, then we could say pre-stop behavior means you don't get restarted, and pod stop means you do. And then it's consistent in that we have a new hook with a new semantic.
Yeah, but then
we have, go ahead.
Then this hook you need for normal containers as well.
Yeah, it's not
Okay,
super
then
meaningful, but it's there.
Yeah, then it's outside of this cap.
No,
You could say this cap, in order to progress, this cap needs that one. You could take a dependency on it, right? Which would almost certainly prevent this from going beta, or would at least say there's a beta life cycle management cap coming, and if you want sidecars, you really want both of them, right? And they could catch up next cycle.
How strong is the use case for pre-stop hooks on sidecars anyways? Like as a straw man, what if we just shipped a sidecar cap without pre-stop working on those containers?
So
No.
the hypothetical case is always like flushing logs from a log collector or pushing your last metric batch or something. Mark, you had a different use case. Can you talk about it?
Yeah, I need to drop pretty soon, but we have a gRPC server as a sidecar that gets talked to locally as part of an SDK that gets bundled into some stuff we do. And we literally have built it in such that it will not shut down until the main container shuts down, so that it can interact with it. So it can pull data, it can change configuration information, it can find out all kinds of things through the SDK, and it's useful for people while that's going on. So it actually stays up.
But I don't think we use pre-stop.
We don't use pre-stop now.
Okay.
We use our own state hooks.
But if you you don't define pre-stop, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah, we don't define pre-stop, but we would want, like, ideally it doesn't crash, but we would want it to restart if it did crash during that time period, during like a termination period.
Do you have any need for like extended shutdown work? Like you go into a different phase?
No, as long as the sidecar is running for the same duration of the main containers, then we're good.
And flushing logs and such, why is that not a, like, I get SIG term and I flush my logs then?
So this is the hard part. If an app container consumes all of the grace period, which is the current, we know happens, right? Like I've written documentation that says, don't exit, wait for SIG kill. So there are containers that are going to just accept the SIG term, acknowledge it, and then move about their business. They're going to wait for SIG kill. At the end of that, there's no grace period left. There's no time to flush logs. So the point of delivering pre-stop all at the same time is the sidecars get the grace period in order to flush buffers, clean up, do whatever they need to do. And if the app containers are polite, they will have some extra time, but they might not. This is mostly in service of these urgent shutdowns, like a preemptible VM going away, or a spot instance. You've got 30 seconds to shut down, and at the end of 30 seconds, the power goes away.
Yeah, I was just trying to figure out if there's a way to, like, because one way to reduce the kind of semantic complexity is just to reduce the complexity and try to trim down the kind of interactions in the API.
Right.
I think the only conversation here how to avoid crash loop backoffs while we are terminating. So what we really don't want is people implementing pre-stop such a way that it will exit, and then we keep restarting this sidecar, showing in their face like, no, you need to run. No, you need to run.
I mean, honestly, like that's the sort of thing you'll see very quickly and be like, wow, what's going wrong here? Let me go figure it out. Oh, I probably shouldn't be exiting here. The docs say don't exit during pre-stop, right? And so I'm okay with it. Like in this case, I would optimize for consistency. It works just like a regular container. It has the same semantics, which means you can assume that it will hit the same sort of edge cases and badness that we all know and love. And at least we recognize it for what it is, as opposed to having a different semantic. This is why I kept coming back to having a different hook was because I could define a different semantic without having to document, well, pre-stop containers need, pre-stop containers will be restarted, but only if they're sidecars. And if they're not sidecars, then they won't be restarted. You know, I hate writing those conditional documentation, which, by the way, is also why I hate the termination grace period override in probes. And if I had read that KEP before it got to beta, I would have shut it down. But because it got to beta without me, I let it go.
Okay. So, I mean, the one way to achieve consistency is to not restart when they're in this limbo state. And I was talking with John from Istio, and he said that they recognize it as a problem, but they try to make their proxy as stable as possible, so they don't care about this edge case as long as everything else works. So,
don't crash is not a strategy.
Yes, I understand. So that's and we have this agonist like critical workload during termination scenario. So I recognize that it's needed. So now if we restart, then the only question for me is like semantically, I don't feel there is a problem semantically. I think it's a sidecar that needs to run through the entirety of life cycle, so we need to restart it. The only problem for me is avoiding crash loops, but you said that crash loops is less important because we just can ask them to change the implementation, which is also, I think it's good for me.
I mean, it's net new, right? Like people are using sidecars. It's a new feature. We can ask them to be aware of the semantic that we want here. So if we define sidecars after pre-stop will still be restarted up until SIG term, I think that's okay. It's just a little bit of extra conditional documentation that we need to write. It makes that pseudocode a little bit more complicated. But honestly, like in net complexity, it's less complex than adding a new hook. Even if I think adding a new hook is the cleaner thing to do, like it's more of a aesthetic than an actual requirement.
Yeah,
but how do they do this Argoness today? Because main containers are not restarted during termination.
It's I don't know.
I mean, we definitely intercept SIG term, but I don't know that we actually handle the crashing case very well. Like if we were actually in termination or terminating that state that we can't describe right now, I think that our sidecar would just crash, which could result in the game server that's talking to the sidecar not being able to finish flushing or whatever.
Yeah, so that's what I was expecting. So today you have the issue, and switching to sidecars will not help. To me, this use case is about something different that should be changed in the regular containers and in the sidecar at the same time.
No, but their scenario is exactly the sidecar.
Yeah, I don't think anybody really cares about it for real containers. I think we care about it for sidecars because it seems clear that a sidecar should bracket the application containers. And so there's like an outer loop and an inner loop that should be happening. The problem is we're using the same signal for two different meanings in the two different loops, which I'm okay with. It's just, I think, documentation, right? And Sergey, I spent a lot of energy arguing for a new hook, but when I realized finally it was more aesthetic than functional, I let it go. So I'll let you have that one.
I don't see it as a win. I just feel that we help our customers to not be overwhelmed with concepts.
Making a decision is a win.
So are we then saying the sidecar would get the pre-stop hook over and over again if it restarts?
Yeah, so it will go through a regular cycle of startup hook and startup probe, and then starting, and then immediately getting a pre-stop again.
With no
pre-stop. If there is no pre-stop, nothing will be called. We'll wait for SIG term.
Which actually should make the pseudocode easier, right? On startup, check if termination grace period is set. If so, send pre-stop, right? And that's true on every sidecar restart.
And the KEP doesn't make any changes to crash loop back off. So if the sidecar keeps crashing, it okay.
No, this is separate KEP. I know you want it.
I know.
Okay. Are we all okay with that? Renal, you've been quiet. Are
Yeah,
you okay?
no, I think that all makes sense, Tim. Yeah, makes sense to me. I think what will help is maybe we can have guidance for the pre-stop and what folks should be doing. So, they can refer to the docs and not be surprised.
Yeah, I think it would be a really good doc. Actually, maybe some docs here exist, but if so, I haven't ever read them. But it might be a really good doc to put in the documentation, the website documentation of like how to use the lifecycle hooks properly. Here's what you should do in pre-stop, and here's what you shouldn't do in pre-stop. Don't exit during pre-stop. That's not what it's for.
Yep.
And then as we get this sort of pseudocode of life cycle, we could put it there. And if we finally converge on some diagrams that actually are correct, we could put them there.
Yeah.
Okay, Matthias, can you write it down and update this KEP?
Yes, I will. Probably tomorrow morning, my time.
Yeah, and also I just wanted to mention that Matthias, you mentioned in different KEP. We also want to introduce event when pre-stop run over the termination. So we want to find out cases when sidecar didn't have opportunity to clear up properly. So we will have warnings on pod.
Good. More events, more better in this case. This is why I like the diagrams, because you can be like, uh-oh, that's a bad transition. We should probably throw an event there.
Yeah. I mean, when I originally thought about this KEP, I wanted pre-stop to be a new non-limbo state, but I don't want to overcrowd this KEP.
So I was looking at state, the status state stuff, and I was wondering if we should be indicating something about like you're in the terminating state, but we can't really add new states because it's sort of an API that people count on. But what we've done what we did for endpoints in the endpoint slice KEP was took one large state and broke it into two smaller states and said, these are no longer like independent states. There are multiple conditions or multiple states could be set at the same time. Yeah. Today, the state, whatever container state structure says one of the following will be set, and it has waiting, running, terminated, right? What if we added a terminating and said one or more of these will be set? So terminating is also running, and then you would have both set. Now again, maybe not in this KEP, but would that help to clarify?
We also have the option, I mean, as you pointed out, this is a new thing, right? So a new thing could have a new state added to it, in theory. Like if someone's interpreting this as a sidecar container, they're going to have to know that it's a sidecar container. So we could then take that as an opportunity to maybe later introduce it to the main container as well, but introduce it first in sidecar.
Sergey or Matthias or Gunju, do you know, are sidecars in the same container statuses list, or are they in a different container statuses list?
We didn't change statuses. It's the same.
So they're in the same list.
Oh, okay.
And it's not possible to have a sidecar and a container with the same name, right? We check that those are unique between the two lists.
Yeah, container names are unique across.
Okay, so you can merge those in the container statuses. So unfortunately, Zach, we can't because people write code that will loop over that.
Yeah.
But as long as we leave the running state set, we could add more information, and that's a compatible change, right?
For sure.
So if you know to look for terminating, then you'll find it, and if you don't know, you'll still find running. Right?
Add a substate field or something.
I mean, that's sort of what it is, right?
Yeah.
So I hate to bring it up. So this conversation about terminating remind me about another topic. on terminating, when we run pre-stop, we stop doing life cycle hooks. Like we stop doing liveness probes. We keep doing readiness probes, but I think liveness probe stops. And this is made intentionally because if liveness probe fail, we cannot call pre-stop again. So we are already pre-stopping. So for sidecars, we will need to decide whether we want to keep running liveness probes after first pre-stop.
Yeah.
So I think we may decide, like may say that no liveness probe after pre-stop, because liveness, I mean, having the same argument basically here, that you don't need liveness when you already asked to pack your stuff. So you are already, like, we expect you to
But we
be
say we'll restart you, and liveness is a failure mode, right? Liveness is used to determine a deadlock instead of a crash, which are, you know, equal failure modes. Can I share a screen? Whoever's got screen sharing, I just wanted to show that drawing real quick.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, you can. You're co-host.
Cool, thank you. Let me just share. Which meeting is this? Call public. Man, I can't find it in all my tabs. Is there not a search for this? Come on, 1 second. Oh, Christ, I'm just going to share the whole window. You guys see that?
Yes.
So this is the this is what you just said, right? As soon as the deletion timestamp is set, we change the life cycle policy, which I think for a sidecar doesn't fly.
Zach, do you run any liveness probes on SDK sidecar? Is it meaningful?
Hold on. Let me. We actually do run a weird. So our SDK, our sidecar ends up being kind of the health for our pod in general, because we basically the core of the SDK server for Agone is that game servers are often built in like frameworks that don't, or running like an HTTP server is not easy. So a lot of things that are normally kind of push like liveness probes are actually initiated from the game server out to the SDK. So we have like health checks that come from the game server to the SDK, and then we proxy. So the whole pod ends up calling the SDKs. Sorry, the game server container actually proxies to the whatchamacallit, sidecars SDK at like liveness port, so that we are interpreting the health checks coming from the game server. It's kind of bizarre, but that is one of the reasons the SDK has to kind of stay up alongside the game server. Did that make any sense?
Yeah, you're not the first one doing that. So basically, you're saying you have a sidecar that is responsible for liveness of whole application.
Yes, of the application container.
Why didn't you start systemd in your pod and just let systemd do all the thing, or those light systemd like?
I mean, part of it is also like we deal a lot with Windows containers and other, you know, like it's more of a try to make a generic framework that most game server frameworks, like as a game server bundle, can deal with easily, and calling out was easier than It's a lot easier to handle than trying to deal with the HTTP server coming in.
Okay, it was S6, the word that I was looking for.
Okay, so this complicates things even further, right? So if you keep running liveness through the terminations, and
if there was a different hook, this wouldn't be an issue. Just saying.
During hook for,
if there was a pod stop hook that wasn't pre-start or pre-stop, then you'd be able to define it as a different semantic.
Yeah, but if the SDK doesn't have a pre-stop, then it's fine.
If it, in this specific case with the SDK, sure, but it feels like the SDK itself should have a liveness. If it doesn't, I mean, almost every pod should, or every container should have a liveness probe, right? Like, if you should have some way of indicating that you are alive and don't need a restart, right? Because again, don't crash is not a strategy. So
I'm actually checking. I think we do have both.
Yeah.
So we're talking about a scenario when pre-stop and like termination of a pod taken significant amount of time, plus you have a sidecar that been called pre-stop, like start terminating, but stuck in a deadlock, and
Right.
needs to be restarted. It's something I want to ignore. I want to ignore it at some point.
I think I remember having a conversation with you, Sergey, about why this KEP was so complicated, because it really is an like a full outer loop and a full inner loop, and they really have to have their own definitions.
And what about having an integrated watchdog inside the SDK that would like check itself and then kill the container? You know, a Go routine that does a SIG term or something.
Check itself. Sorry, you're saying check the SDK is checking itself, or the
yes, because the SDK cannot have a liveness probe because the liveness probe is the one of the game container. But if the SDK needs its own liveness probe, it can have implement a sort of watchdog and watch for itself, and then have the watchdog kill himself, or something like this.
Sorry, we do have both liveness probes. So the primary app container has a liveness probe. I just checked this, and it's /healthz on 8080, which is the SDK's port, and then and then there's another path for the other container also hosted on the SDK. So the SDK actually maintains its own liveness health as well.
But the SDK is serving liveness for the app container?
Yes, that's what I was trying to explain earlier.
That's dubious, but okay.
Yeah. This is what I was trying to explain, that the app container is basically giving push health probes, like it's calling to the SDK to say, hey, I'm healthy.
Right. I know, I get it. I've seen the pattern before, right? Where the app itself doesn't have an HTTP port that it can expose or something. And so you do that, like helper, but immediately it makes me wonder what's going on behind the scenes.
The first time I saw it, I agree with you, and I had to rework that whole system because of reasons.
Anyway, it's more likely to be false positive than false negative, so I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Right. Worst case is we end up restarting the container when we didn't need to, but better than missing failures.
Yeah.
I think the question, Team Ronald, are you okay with not running liveness probes after termination, or you have a strong feeling about it?
I mean, I feel pretty strongly if we're going to guarantee that sidecars stay alive and get restarted, that liveness is part of that.
Yep, agree. Yep. We have cases where termination is going to take a long time, and we want to make sure that sidecar is actually up during that time.
I mean, liveness is a blunt instrument, but it's really there because we're all idiots sometimes, and we all write deadlocks or runaways or whatever. I mean, not me, but I hear other people do.
Okay.
Only with Rust.
Yeah, we need to check in history. I think we only changed the liveness and pre-stop behavior quite recently for regular containers. Okay, so let's write it down as we will keep running liveness probes and see where it will lead us. I don't see immediate problems besides that it's not the same as for regular containers. Just what is it? What may come up out of it?
Okay, well, let's try to get the pseudocode then of the lifecycle management written down and see if it makes sense. I do think this is a really good case for an end-to-end test, right? Where liveness fails on the sidecar, and we restart it. Oof, doesn't sound fun to write, but it sounds interesting.
I think we have a framework capable of doing that now. So
great. Okay. And the goal here is to go beta in 29, right?
So yeah, it was second topic for the today. We really want to get into beta for 29. Matthias wrote a PR for that. So the only question beyond PR, I think we can answer questions in PR. The question is how, like, since we don't change API, it's theoretically okay. But then my worry is what is covered in GKE, for instance, when we enabled it in 128 through alpha feature, we discovered that we had some webhooks that relied on previous definition, previous typing system. So they stripped out restart policy and like rendered the pod completely useless. Same happens with Istio. So Istio before 1. I don't remember 8. They also had the same problem, so they needed to recompile everything with 128 type definitions. I think my biggest worry for upgrades and for enabling this by default is people wouldn't realize that they have this dependency on old typing system, and it's not like this will always happen. It may only happen for pods that you want to change, like apply some webhook for, and it will be hard to chase this kind of problems. You're muted.
This isn't unique to pods though, right? Any webhook which receives a type might lose new fields if it returns that type and doesn't know about it, right? Like that seems like a general problem that we should look at from the lens of server-side apply, like a webhook returning a patch or something should not nuke unknown fields. Maybe we should be three-way merging the result of a webhook back into the original object. But that's Antoine's expertise, not mine, by far.
Yeah, so I think this is, in my head, is the biggest risk of the feature. Reliability-wise, we have so many things, so many tests. We already found the problem with restart, and we are addressing that. We may have problems with termination, but I think we're not changing semantic big enough, so it should be reasonably scoped.
So what are our choices here? If we don't go beta, we'll never actually find these cases. We could just wait. I mean, like if we stayed in alpha for another year, then it's much more likely that webhooks will have been recompiled, but no guarantees. You know, if we stay for 10 years, then it's more likely yet, but still not guaranteed. So the alternative is we go beta and we just try to suss out where people are doing this, and we have the conversation with API machinery about, is this the right way to do it? Like, it seems deeper than this KEP. I could be okay going beta without the sort of more subtle lifecycle stuff like liveness probes. Like I could see that coming in during beta, but we couldn't go GA without it. I do think the restarts is probably required to go beta. Liveness probe feels like a second order problem.
Okay, but I have a question. Now in beta, we still enable features by default?
Yes.
Necessarily, but typically yes.
Yeah, typically you're right. We don't always, but yes.
So let's try to write PR such a way that, like, if PR reviewers will find any more issues, we will raise them. Otherwise, we can try to target beta. Murnal, do you have any opinion?
I'm fine with targeting beta.
It might make sense to, I know PR, and there's like days left, but it might make sense to try to grab time with whoever's PRRing this. Is it Wojciech or David or John?
It's Wojtek and a shadow reviewer as well.
Okay, so it might make sense to see if Wojciech could spend, even 15 minutes talking about this webhooks problem and what he thinks about it. He's got some better ideas.
He already destroyed my PR pull request, so I'm racing against the clock to try to.
Yeah, I think I discussed with Wojciech already. He was generally okay, but for sure we need to just iron everything out and make sure all the questions answered.
Okay.
Okay, we are at time. We need to run to the different meeting. Thank you everybody for coming. Really conversation.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks
Yes,
all. Good
thank you for
conversation.
coming. See you.
Thanks.
Bye.